Hello everyone, my name is Molly.
Hi, this is Martha. Welcome to the Zentangle Project Pack series. This lesson is part of Project Pack number 4.
Project Pack 4 was designed around a specific project that we are calling the Zentangle Spinner. We are using our annual 12 Days of Zentangle series to share 12 consecutive days of lessons with you to guide you along in filling this spinner with tangles.
Today is the 6th day in the series, but if you are watching these after the day they are posted, you can easily do this lesson out of order.
So today, we are going to guide you through filling one wedge of your spinner with some tangles. And me and Martha are going to work together, and Martha's going to get started.
All right, so we're going to work on a fresh spinner here. So you may have some of these wedges filled in already. And it doesn't matter which one you want to start on. I'm going to work on this one right here, L and M. So I'm going to put my tools aside and just have my Micron 01 ready to go. And I'm going to start close to the center here in this orangey colored, salmon colored wedge. And I'm going to do a tangle called Swarm. That's S-W-A-R-M. And it's a tangle that we don't play around with too much, so we thought we'd bring it out to play today. So here we go. Swarm uses straight lines only, and the key to this tangle is to keep your spacing as uniform as possible. So you can watch me first and then join along. I'm going to do a straight line here, and then I'm going to draw aura lines, slowly getting smaller. So the ultimate shape I end up with is a triangle. And then turning my spinner slightly, I'm going to draw an aura around one long side. And then continue with my auras like that to form another triangle.
It's sort of like drawing Tripoli, but you're making the triangles out of these like sort of aura lines.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. It reminds me a little bit of Indirella too, but with straight lines. So maybe that'll help you as you're going along.
What's also cool about this tangle, and there's only a few like this, is that no two lines ever touch, which I always think is kind of cool. Most of the time in our tangles, we're joining strokes together to make shapes. Mm-hmm. And these all remain sort of by themselves, but they create these sort of contour triangular shapes.
And you'll see that it's not just the spacing within this triangle that forms, it's the space in between that in the end creates another pattern.
This is a great texturing tangle. You can definitely put this in the background of some tiles that you work on, and it shades up really nice too. So now you have that tiny, you can fit one tiny triangle in there.
Yeah, I'm going to get a small one.
Very cool.
And you'll see that like a lot of our other tangles, you're not really aiming for perfection because it will just become a texture in the background.
Or a swarm.
Or a swarm filling your background.
So these texturing tangles work well to just really just spread the entire space you have, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of digging this spinner. It spins really easily.
It's kind of fun to explore some tangles that we don't use very often.
Absolutely.
Very cool. I love like the bits of negative space that start to become more apparent as she fills in different spaces.
Well, I'm pretty filled up there now. And you know, with the color in the background, you can certainly use your own judgment on how you want to shade or if you want to shade at all. But I feel like adding a little graphite around the edges might just kind of reinforce that texture background.
And we're shading ours now because we're trying to give you ideas of how you might shade each tangle. But if you want to wait till your whole spinner's done and then add your graphite, that's totally fine too. So you can sort of lock in this for later, or you can explore it now.
And hopefully your spinner is nice and dry after you have added your color. But I want to be gentle on the paper. You don't want to push so hard.
Ooh, I like that highlight in the middle. That's cool.
Yeah, so I'm just leaving the center space kind of with no graphite, and it sort of already has a little bit of a lighter tone from the watercolor.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I like that. My turn.
All right, you're next.
Okay, so I am going to work in this next space up here, and I get to do a tangle that's actually one of my favorite, which is kind of fun. I put it in almost every one of
Actually, I wanted to do poke root, but Molly said,
Oh, really?
I'm gonna do poke root.
That's how it always is. Well, the younger one usually gets what she wants.
Okie dokie.
So, poke root is fun to kind of grow out of a certain tangle or grow out of a certain corner, and that way you can kind of play with it, sort of like going towards the center or going towards another side. So when I draw my poke root, I start with a little stem like that. I usually like to put a little bit of a curve in it, and to me that adds some character instead of a straight stem. It adds a little bit of just life to it. And then at the end of the stem, I sort of want to cap it off, again with not just a straight line, but just add a little tiny arc to it and adds a little kind of interest. And then what I'm going to do is draw my berry. And what I like to tell people is when I'm drawing my berry is that I want the sort of stem to be poking through right in the middle of that berry. And I want my berry to be kind of round, circular. So that's one berry. Then each new one that I draw is going to kind of be growing off the others. So I think I'm going to work just from one corner here. What do you think?
Sure.
And they can kind of vary in size. I always think that poke root really adds to a tile. And it's funny, when I see kind of artwork here and there, if I see poke root, I know that person at some point in time was a Zentangle person, because it's this kind of unique approach.
Well,
And,
it's true. It's a pattern that really was born with Zentangle in mind. It did not come from inspiration other than nature. And I don't think I've ever seen it anywhere else.
right? So fun. And poke root, we've probably told this story a million times, but it actually is inspired by the actual poke root plant, and which grows here in New England. And it's one of those crazy plants that it grows like in the crack of sidewalks. Like it doesn't need much. It just shows up. And I think it ends up being quite beautiful. But a lot of people call it a weed. I don't call it a weed, though.
No, when you see those around, we just sort of let them be and let them take over their little section of sidewalk. Kind of like this one's taken over.
Right?
This wedge there.
Trying to figure out how much black I want to put in my background. So a lot of times with my poke root, I'll go back in and ink in these little interstices. And I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for this little inking in area. It's going to add some contrast on my tile. So, all right. So that looks pretty good. That's a nice
Love it.
big space for some poke root. I'm going to add a little bit of graphite here. And like we were saying before, if you want to wait to add your shading to the end, that's fine. We're just sort of showing you some of the options. I'm really playing with the tangle itself. Martha played with sort of the whole shape, but I'm playing with all the little spaces that the tangle actually opens up. So kind of seeing which of these berries sort of overlap and adding a little bit graphite here and there. And then taking my tortillon and not too aggressively, I'm just inviting that graphite into the paper because you don't want to.
Well, the watercolor really changes the surface a little bit.
Little bit, yeah.
Makes it a little bit more vulnerable, so you want to be careful.
And we sort of did this a little differently. When we did our ribbon project, we added the color at the end, but we wanted to offer you kind of two different approaches. And so if you still want to add the color at the end, that's an option too. So that's poke root. That's a good one. You ready for the next one?
Yeah.
So I am going to start the next one. And I love this little space to put a border in here. And the tangle we're going to put in here isn't traditionally a border, but we like to break tradition a lot.
It's not even a traditional tangle.
It's not.
Unless you need it.
You need it. So the tangle we're talking about is Bronx cheer. And it's a beautiful, I guess, relative to our no mistakes philosophy. And so a lot of times we recommend using a Bronx cheer when you're trying to cover something up or you're trying to kind of make something look new. I guess that's a good way to put it. So traditionally, Bronx cheer ends up looking a lot like a raspberry or inspired by a raspberry. But we're going to use the texture or the strokes of Bronx cheer, but we're going to put it into a border. Okay, so here's how it goes. So Bronx cheer is these kind of dark circles that go around and around and around, and then we leave a little bead at the top of white. And you just want to smush them together and go round and round and round till you get to the center.
It doesn't even have to be in the center. It can be anywhere on that
Right.
sort of piece of caviar.
Right,
Little
and that's what
fish
it
egg
is.
almost, right?
And I think it's almost better if they kind of overlap the actual outlines of the border. And I like a little bit of white space in my strokes too. So I don't want it to be like completely inked in circle. I like this sort of like you can see that I was going round and round and round and round toward the center. Martha, you want to finish up this?
Sure.
These types of sort of really repetitive motions, it's a good idea to remember to lighten up on your grip. Take a deep breath. Your pen's not going to jump out of your hand.
So this is kind of fun because we gave everybody in the project packs 2 spinners. So we thought they can follow along in the first one and do all the tangles that we're guiding you through and showing you. But then on the second one, you can really personalize it and add all the tangles that are your favorites or the ones that you want to try to use more, or maybe the tangles that you've come up with, or whatever it is. It'll be like a custom tangle spinner. So I'm actually really excited to see those ones.
Borders are such a great sort of accessory to add to a tile. And, we often think of using a fragment, which is a great source, but, this is just a completely different approach.
Right?
Sneak over here just a little.
And I don't think, obviously, we need to add much shading to that right now, but we're going to add
Well, we can do something fun later.
We'll do something, yeah. So
Because it's pretty inky now anyway. We want to let it dry for a little bit.
it does look like caviar.
I know. So we've got 2 spaces left. I'm gonna go on the left. Is that all right with you?
Yep.
And maybe it's only fitting that I am going to do a tangle called Huggins. And if you didn't already know, that's my last name, actually. And Huggins it's like a grid tangle, except we work on we have to envision our grid. So we're not actually going to put it down there. We're going to draw a series of circles and make sort of like a pegboard. So I'm going to try to evenly space my pegs on this square, and I'll show you one way to do it if you want to follow along. I am going to start with, I'm going to kind of copy this size here and draw a circle, and I'm going to use that size, and I'm going to put one in each corner.
And if you've never done Huggins, you may try this on either another tile or paper or something before doing it on your spinner, because I think it takes a little bit of focus.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point, Molly. You could do that with any of these tangles that we're teaching. If you're just afraid to make that first mark on this beautiful spinner, go ahead and do it on a tile first, and then go back and do it as you please. So to continue my pegboard here, what I want to do is fit in 2 more circles evenly spaced along each row and in each column. So I'm going to sort of eyeball it, and you just do your best.
It doesn't need to be exact.
And of course, this, because we're working on a circle, this here is a little bit more space down here. So I'll just evenly space them here. And then the same here. And on this side. And then the last step would be to put the last 4 pegs as you can see them fitting in these columns and rows. So about here and about here. So the next stroke that I'm going to make is, it's like a C stroke, but we're going to sort of take off and land off these 2 pegs right here. I know my mom has said before that she thinks of an old telephone receiver. You can watch me do one. See how I started here? I took off on this top peg and I landed on the bottom peg.
It's like a C shape.
It is like a C shape. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the next 2, but I'm going to do it on the opposite side. So I'm going to come off the top here and land on the bottom. Opposite side, land on the bottom. And we're working in a small space here, and sometimes if you're just learning this tangle, it might be a little easier to work in a slightly larger space, but that's up to you. So for the next column, we're going to do the opposite. So I was doing this motion here, and for these 2, I'm going to connect them on this side. And then alternate.
I really like to completely pause in between each stroke, and that way I can take a moment
Right.
and really look what where the next stroke is going to be, and just take my time. And once you get to know Huggins, you go like so.
It goes quickly, and it all makes sense.
But when you're first starting out, you really want to take your time.
So I'm going to go back to the first, do this just like the first row. And then I do the opposite, take off and land. Take off and land, and now I'll alternate here. And here. So I guess, so that's kind of a cool looking thing. I don't know what it looks like, but it's the next moves that we make that will really sort of bring this tangle to life. So I'm going to now connect all of the vertical rows again going this way. I'm going to make my first motion off the top and connect. Then I'll do the opposite. I went over the edge a little. And there. On the next row, again, just like I did before.
And it really does make a difference when you take the time to take off and land from each circle, because you get this sort of fluid effect to your patterns.
And like Molly said, just sort of take a break each time as you see everything. And you could almost do it in your head first just to make sure, I don't
Good
want to go
call.
that way because I'll cross over those lines. So you sort of,
Yeah, the sort of
it in
invisible
your head.
stroke first
yeah.
in the air. That's a good call.
And, you know, you guys are lucky because you can stop and rewind and watch this again if you need to.
This is actually the 12th time she's done this.
There we go.
Pretty cool. I love
It is
Huggins.
pretty cool.
It's a good tangle.
So, I mean, that's pretty great as is, but, you know, you can add some different elements. Well, maybe what I'll do is, I think I'll go in and see these long sections here. Right now I see 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. I'm going to just add another layer and aura the inside of each of these long sections.
I actually really like that with Huggins. I think it adds a little,
Yeah, it really does. It brings the pattern.
kind of looks like regal to me. It's funny how such little details make such a big difference.
Mm-hmm. And then I'll turn my spinner and do all the long sections again.
So when I do my custom spinner, I think I'll purposely make it a collection of my most favorite tangles and then the ones that I avoid the most.
Ah,
That's
good for you.
My thoughts anyway.
So with my graphite, so we've got these long sections here, right? And I'm going to add just some shading wherever you have the short sections in here. And then again, you turn it and you go inside.
Sort of right inside the C shape.
Mm-hmm. And then with the tortillon, you just sort of draw it to the center a little bit.
Kind of making sure you leave that unshaded part in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm. When you turn your artwork, you get this new perspective each time, and you say, oh, I forgot to shade that one, or I forgot to connect those two pegs. Anyway, it's good to give yourself that perspective.
That's some good Huggins. Oh my goodness, these are going to be so cool. All filled in.
See, I forgot one. We do say this a lot, but working with the side of your pencil, you get a much softer application of graphite, and it's much easier to blend.
Yeah, you don't get that sort of dark line.
Well, with a really sharp pencil, you can almost dent the paper.
Yeah. Very cool.
There we go.
All right, last one. Okay, so we have one more space left in the area we planned on doing, and I'm going to do a tangle called Pepper. And I'm actually going to put a little bit of a additional string down in mine because Pepper is really a tangle that does well in like a circle. And so I'm going to actually just sort of like put a big circle in here. And I'm not worried about it being perfect, so I kind of just put a circle in there. And you could do 2 small ones, or you could do a big one like I'm doing, but that's how I'm doing my peppers. I guess you could put a inked in circle if you wanted to, but I prefer to do it this way. And usually in a tile with a string, I would search out a circular area to play with pepper. So I am going to begin by putting in these sort of like really skinny wedge-like sort of shapes that goes right to about the middle. And I sort of kind of hug it around the edge of that pencil line. And then I'm going to put a little space, and then I'm going to do another one of these like sort of wedge shapes, but can you see how I kind of hooked it around?
That takes a little practice sometimes.
A little bit of practice there, yeah. Turn this around. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy here.
You'll notice how she's now approaching it from the center, and so you'll want to try it both ways just to see which feels more natural for your hand. Sometimes the stroke comes out better coming from one direction or another.
What's funny is I didn't even realize I was doing it 2 different ways, Martha.
Oh, really?
Not funny.
I thought you deliberately did that.
Oh, well.
I thought that was a really amazing teaching moment.
Just trying to get my tile wrapped around here. So pepper was inspired by those old-fashioned peppermint candies that you may see around still. They're white and pinkish, white and red. So if you notice as I get a few going here, I'm sort of like leaving this space in the middle to create an open area.
You can see an imaginary circle forming.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, right? And it's fun to use that pencil string because then you have this sort of like assumed space going on. It's pretty neat. So that's my last one, I think. Which is pretty cool.
It's perfect. I mean, in an imperfect, perfect way.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Sorry, wait. Here we go. There's my pepper. So I added a lot of ink there, so I'm going to leave it for 1 second. But I had this other thought, Martha, with our Bronx cheer.
Oh, I know.
And so I know you guys didn't get these in your project pack, but if anybody has a white jelly roll hanging around.
It could be any thickness, really.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm just going to go into my Bronx cheer and sort of add just a few additional highlights with the white jelly roll just to accentuate a few of them. I think it just makes it kind of cool. So it makes them almost raise up.
That is awesome.
Right? Just a few here and there. I think that'll be cool. All right, now assuming my pepper's a little bit dry, I'm going to go around and sort of add a little shading where that original string line was. Right? So it really looks like those
Oh, they're totally wrapping over the
stripes,
edge.
right? This would make it a very sophisticated peppermint if you ever saw one like this. So we've already become evolved from the original peppermint.
You're definitely shading a little bit inside, so it's you're leaving that space for the ink to be over the edge.
Right. All right, so that's pretty cool. And then I'm just going to take my tortillon and and what's great about this shading is I really can avoid the ink that I was worried about being wet, so.
Yeah, you don't even have to touch it.
Nope. Well, that is pretty cool, Martha.
So much fun.
All right, so I think that's it for day 6.
That's the winning wedge.
What?
For sure.
There's no winners in Zentangle. Stop
beautiful.
it. All right, well, it's going to be a cool one. We look forward to playing along with you guys again tomorrow.
See you
Have a
soon.
good one.
Bye.
Bye.